listening to The Trade Gods.
What's going on, Player Profiler Nation? It's Matty Kiwoom, and I am joined by my fellow Trade God brethren, the morning man himself, Mr. Jason Allwine. Jay, what is up, my brother?
Nothing too much. About to talk some, what we're doing, stashes, deep values today. I'm excited to get kind of into the weeds a little bit, talk some lesser talked about players. I think it's going to be a good show. And as always, just excited to be back for Trade Gods. It's just so much fun chopping it up with you, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very, very excited to talk each and every Wednesday now. This is a very fun episode because a lot of the times I think we gravitate towards the blockbusters, right? We always try to talk about blockbusters. We also try to talk strategy in terms of buying low, selling high, that sort of thing. But today we're kind of taking a different approach. We are looking at some players that we consider stashes in Dynasty, and how you acquire them is in basically as throw-ins, I'd say, right? These are the guys that if you see an offer, like, let's, for instance, I'll pull back the fourth wall. Well, look, what is it? Look through the fourth wall? Whatever. I'm talking to you folks that rock with the TG. I was offered Devontae Adams for Mike Evans. And it's a trade that I'd like. I value the two receivers essentially around the same. But I just felt like if you're going to come to me looking for my Evans, you need to give me a little something extra. You need to give me a little something on the top. So these are the type of guys that if you have a trade like that and you want a stash guy, someone that you can put on your roster that may break out this year or be effective for you down the stretch, however you want to dice it, these are those absolute best stashes. And maybe we could talk a little bit about how to go about acquiring them or some of the strategies you would employ to do so. So, Jason, what do you say? Why don't we just get right on into it? We got 10 guys. We got to get into it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, so the first player that if you acquire is worth the stash, the must stashes in Dynasty. Let's go with your number one candidate. Who's the first guy on your list?
Oh, man. Yeah, and I guess I feel like I went pretty far down for a lot of these. I tried to maybe go in the middle, but I honestly kept just getting, what is it, googly-eyed at some of these deeper guys. And Andrei Iosivas is one of them. Iosivas, however it's pronounced. He's sitting at wide receiver 96 right now. And that's basically some leagues he's on the waiver wire. Some leagues, some dudes thinking about cutting him and just wanting a reason to get rid of him. And some leagues, it is deeper and he does hold a little bit more value. But either way, I think that this is a guy you could pretty easily acquire in a trade, not even as your main target, or just a really, really late pick either this year or even in a couple years from now. And the reason I'm kind of getting in on him is, I guess, just rumor season mostly, but also what we saw on the field last season. So I'll speak a bit on the rumors, what we're hearing from the NFL Combine this weekend. Matthew Berry comes out and publishes an article that, T. Higgins is franchise tagged, and that doesn't mean that he's going to be on the Bengals. They're still looking at trying to trade him a little bit. And then you also hear that Joe Burrow comes out and really loves Andrei Iosivas. And I think that that's really good news, especially when you kind of dive a little bit deeper into the profile, a little bit deeper into the metrics. You see 6'3", 205 pounds. You see he runs a 4.43 40, has 80th percentile agility, 87th percentile burst, 90th percentile speed. Dude went to Princeton, so he's probably a genius. And then had a 26.7% touchdown rate last season. Only 15 receptions, but 4 of them were touchdowns. Week 6, 1 target, 1 catch, 1 touchdown with Joe Shiesty. Week 8, 1 target, 1 catch, 1 touchdown with Joe. And then in week 16, he had 8 targets from Jake Browning, brought in 4 of them for 36 yards. And then in week 18, last game of the season, whatever, we'll give Andrei Iosivas a little bit more shots. 7 targets. Brings in 5 of them, 36 yards and 2 touchdowns last game of the season. So I just think that you hear Joe Burrow say he likes him. The uncertainty around the Bengals and T. Higgins situation, even though he's franchise tag. And even if, T. Higgins does stay with the Bengals, this is a guy who was still getting on the field a decent bit, still probably could get on the field because Tyler Boyd's future is uncertain. Injuries can always happen. And just I think you should bet on a guy with this kind of profile for that cheap. And I'll say, while I'm here, Charlie Jones, probably also a good one. Another backup wide receiver on the Bengals. And he may be, way cheaper even, probably even more available than Andrei Iosivas. And with Tyler Boyd's future with the Bengals even more uncertain, the more slot guy, which would be Charlie Jones, is even more of someone to maybe try to latch yourself onto this offseason. But there's just really no metrics or stats to go with him. We just know he runs good routes, and he's probably going to replace Tyler Boyd. Maybe. But either way, those are two guys I'm trying to get in throw-ins right now because, you're attaching yourself to Joe Burrow and the Bengals at the end of the day.
And I think we're going to see a similar theme here as we skim the top of our lists.
Yeah.
Second-year receivers that may be forgotten are guys worth bringing aboard and worth stashing if needed. Iosivas, Jones, I'm going to go over to a guy that was drafted last year. He was drafted at the end of the 6th round. Didn't score a touchdown in his NFL debut and only scored 7.7 games last year, 7.7 points per game in fantasy last year over 14 games. And that's the Patriots wide receiver, Demario Douglas. Currently wide receiver 61 in the market. The Keep Trade Cut is telling us. And I think this guy's just a little bit forgotten about. And someone you could acquire now or put him into a trade now, bring him on your team, stash him, and just kind of see how the rest of the offseason plays out.
Mm-hmm.
And then potentially have a bit of a value bump here in just a month or so. Last year, he had over 300 yards after catch. He had a 24.8% target rate, which was amongst 22nd amongst qualified receivers. And he was also 18th in target separation. Some indicators that he was pretty solid. And you go from 23 to 24, you realize the Patriots are the definition of a dumpster fire. But either way you look at it, you're probably going to get an upgrade at quarterback. They're going to bring in more weapons, so he can kind of be solidified in a role that's more advantageous for a guy of his skill set. So that's why I think Demario Douglas may not be the guy worth putting an entire game plan around to buy. But if you're looking to balance the scales, if you're looking to kind of swoop in on someone that you can stash here over the offseason, I'm going to go with Demario Douglas, wide receiver from the Patriots. Jason, what's your next stash guy that you're looking to bring aboard?
And I also just want to say I like the Demario Douglas buy. I even, I'm a sicko, so I'm even more of a Tyquan Thornton buy guy too. I like trying to latch onto this Patriots offense right now.
They bring in Jaden. Do you smell that? I think it smells like Tyquan Thornton down here. Thanks.
No, he's terrible. But, I think that they're probably going to end up drafting Jaden Daniels. And then you're talking about Demario Douglas, who probably has a pretty solid role in the slot, and Tyquan Thornton, who, going to be boom or bust, but is probably going to score some touchdowns with that quarterback at the helm. So I don't mind. I just like the idea of going to the Patriots offense right now. Another offense that I think it's important to try to attach yourself to, especially at the cost of basically nothing, is the Houston Texans. And I just can't quit John Metchie yet. I think that it's a little less certain. It's definitely more risky. There's lots of stuff out there with the Texans potentially drafting a wide receiver, getting someone in free agency. And Tank Dell and Nico Collins have earned a ton. But Noah Brown's going to be a free agent. He could come back, whatever. Robert Woods, they have an out on his contract, and I think they'll probably take it, given he basically did nothing last season. There's really no reason for him to be there. Sorry. And he may be going into year 3, but really it's year 2. His rookie season, he was lost to cancer. He kind of came back late last year, and he honestly closed out the season strong. Week 17, 60% snap share. Week 18, 68% snap share. And both games in the playoffs saw 72% snap shares, even had 44 yards catching all 3 of his targets against the Browns. So, this is a guy that they spent a second-round pick on, now technically going into year 2, and on a very much an ascending offense with a great quarterback. Why not? Right. Well, I'm just asking myself, why not with this guy? I know that it's a risk, but why not take it?
Alex Dunlap from Roster Watch was on the Mind of Mansion with Matt Kelly this week, and that was his truther guy. The guy he's not quitting is John Metchie. So you're not alone in the thought process of acquiring and rostering and stashing John Metchie. My next candidate here is someone that I'm willing to bring aboard and stash, regardless if he gets a price bump or a stock kind of cliff. after free agency, and that's Antonio Gibson. 6 feet, 228 pounds. We know he's got the 4.3 speed. We know he can catch the ball. We know he has a lot left to offer, a lot more to offer an NFL team than he's been given with his 3 years in the league for the Washington Commanders. He's a free agent, going to be 26 next year. He's someone that if I bring on to my team, I'm willing to stash even if he signs onto a situation that seems bad. And I know the word bad is awful, and the word awful is even worse. But if he's just on a team and he's the backup to whoever and the situation's good, I'm still stashing. I'm still holding. I'm still believing in the player. I will be a truther of Tony G until I'm done playing this game or until he decides to hang up the cleats. Right now, he's running back 49. So price is nothing. He's kind of a forgotten asset. I think a lot of people who have rostered Gibson have they've had a few ups, but many, many downs, and the price is just as low. So if there's someone I could swoop in on, if I see him on my trade block, if I can add him to a trade, I'm going to bring on Tony Gibson to put him on my roster and then stash, whether he's the starter for a franchise and be a free agency, or if he's just a backup and then we're just an injury away from the Tony G show. So I'm going to go ahead and try to acquire and stash Tony Gibson. Before we keep this list moving, let's go ahead and hear about one of our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by PlayerProfiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help strategize where you should take players because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
Welcome on back to the Trade Gods. Matty, Kiwoom, Jason, Allwine, breaking down players that you should acquire and stash in Dynasty. Jason, who's the third guy on your list today?
You went running back, so I'll go with one of my running back, or I guess the only running back I'm going to be talking about today, and that's Izzy Abanikanda. This is the guy I'm going to be dubbing the premierest handcuff this offseason. This is a player that I'm probably going to be taking way too many shots on in best ball formats, and really just when you're trying to find that guy that you think has a pretty solid ceiling, if the cards fall in the right way. Israel Abanikanda right now is sitting at RB 68 and just has really, really good athleticism, and he's pushed out Dalvin Cook. He pushed out Michael Carter and pushed out Zonovan Knight. I mean, he started as the RB5 on this team last year. 3 of the dudes ahead of him have just completely left. They gave up. And he's now sitting as Breece Hall's backup. And Breece Hall's an incredible running back. And even as incredible as he is, his backup's going to see the field like 25% of the time, maybe a little right around there. And when you're 5'10", run a 4.5 40, you have an 81st percentile speed score, 97th percentile burst score, and you're an incredibly productive college runner as well, I think you're going to do pretty well. And so I'm getting Israel Abanikanda, especially if I own Breece Hall. That's almost a must. In fact, that might be the one where it's not even a throw in. Like if you own Breece Hall, I think that you should probably just go legitimately ask for Israel Abanikanda. Maybe just give up like a 5th, a 4th, or like a 3rd in 2026, like far away. But either way, that's a player I'm looking at and I think has a really high ceiling for really no cost at all right now.
Very fast running back, worth stashing. Love it. The next guy on my list is actually someone that I know already that you love, someone that you've kind of rang the bell for. And I've been a little bit lost in the woods.
Ooh.
And I'm talking about tight end from the Indianapolis Colts, Jelani Woods. 6'7", 252 pounds, 89th percentile 40, 94th percentile speed, and 94th percentile burst score. He is the forgotten man of fantasy. He has one of the craziest catch radiuses you could ever imagine on a particular player. And when asked at the NFL Combine, Chris Ballard said this, not only about Woods, but the tight end room in general. But he said that they don't have an elite tight end. No. He says, but we have is a good room with good players that have a different set of skills. And then when specifically talking about Jelani Woods, he said this, and I quote, not having Jelani Woods, who we had big hopes for, he was hurt all last year. This new staff doesn't even know who he is. They haven't had a chance to really work with him, and we think he has upside. We do like the room, and we like what it has to offer. You could read that as a pick'em. So if you want Granson, if you want Mo Alley, if you want Mil Malroy, sure. I'm just going to bet on the 6'7" super freak athlete that can go up and get it for a quarterback that's going to be scrambling around because that's what he does well. Chris Ballard also went out and said this during his media scrum, that he does not believe, and his staff does not believe, that they need to key in on certain players' skill sets that complement Anthony Richardson. They want the best players available. And Jelani Woods is going to have a chance to come out in the offseason, work hard, get himself on the depth chart, make himself known, make himself known. Like Chris Ballard said, they don't know who he is. Yeah. And that's the guy I'm willing to bet on. You've talked him up before. So I'm saying if you want to acquire a tight end that you can stash, that you can put on the back burner and hope to have high hopes for as soon as next year, don't look any further than Jelani Woods. And I'm going to give you the 4 real quick because I know you've been singing his praises. So is there anything you want to add about Jelani that I may have missed? And are you still on rostering Jelani Woods?
I mean, I just like to point to 2 games from his rookie season. One, it was like week 6 against the Chiefs. He had 2 touchdowns. One of them literally a game winner. Like the Colts only win that season. They had a couple, but they beat the Chiefs, and it was on the heels of Jelani Woods. That's how they got Anthony Richardson. It was such a bad season. And then towards the end of the year, I think it was against the Steelers, he had 8 receptions for 98 yards, I think off of 9 targets. Like he's a guy who, when getting volume, when getting opportunity, has produced. And his rookie season, it was terrible, terrible, terrible quarterback play. So the fact he was able to produce that much as a rookie, and then we unfortunately lost him last season, and then saw all 4 other tight ends have games, especially if you put their stats together.
You just knit it all together.
That's a tight end you want. So I'm all in on Jelani Woods. I've had him stuck on my IR in the Trade Gods League since last season. And I actually wrote about him. There's a whole article. I did an end of season tight end awards article for Player Profiler 2 months ago. And I named him just tight end not to forget about. So
the definition of a stash. Jason, who's the next guy on your list?
I'll go tight end. And it was going to be Jelani Woods, but it's nice to see someone else talk about him.
I beat you to the notes. The notes.
I went with Daniel Bellinger. Because I just think it's interesting how much we've forgotten about him, and his value might have taken a little bit of an increase now, but probably not quite with the news that Darren Waller is considering retirement, who actually I don't even think is technically on the Giants roster right now anyway. But still, that's big news. If he does retire, then Daniel Bellinger is going to be the starter. And I mean, the Giants need so much. They're probably not going to get a tight end. And we can add some bro science into this as well. If you'll remember his rookie season, the dude fractured his eye socket, literally got poked in the eyeball, was bleeding out of his eyes, and still played. And at tight end, if you can do that, you're a tough dude. And that's really what it takes for that position. And you can kind of look down the stretch last season, and this isn't really going to catch your attention crazy, but week 9, 3 targets, 3 receptions. Week 10, 3 targets, 2 receptions. 11, 3 targets, 3 receptions. 1 target, 1 reception. 2 targets, 2 receptions. 2 targets, 2 receptions. 5 targets, 4 receptions. 4 targets, 4 receptions. 2 drops from week 9 to 17 is the best way to phrase that instead of going number by number. But the dude is extremely reliable. Had no quarterback last season. Was doing this even with Darren Waller kind of on the field every once in a while. And there's rumors that the Giants might upgrade the quarterback position. But even if they don't, I mean, I think that last year was just a really weird year for the Giants. I don't necessarily think Daniel Jones is like great or anything, but I think it would still be an upgrade from what we saw last season, especially if they bring in a little bit more help. Really, the Giants offense as a whole, I think, is somewhere where you're going to find some value. Jalen Hyatt, Daniel Bellinger, whoever replaces Saquon. I mean, this is going to be a team that has to catch up a lot because they're terrible. And these pass catchers are going to be catching the ball.
PPR leagues, be on the lookout, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
My next player that I'd like to talk about that I'm stashing, I'm trying to acquire now, while the community and the markets are a little hush on him, is second-year receiver Jonathan Mingo for the Carolina Panthers. 4.46 speed. He's got really good speed score, really great burst, good catch radius. Had a game last year where he had double-digit targets. But I'm kind of just looking at the narratives here. I'm kind of looking at the path to playing time. He was on the field a ton last year, so that is encouraging. Everyone knows that Carolina is going to be targeting a receiver, but they don't have a first-round pick. They got to trade into the first round. So however that spins about it, that is going to prove to potentially be a difficult task for the new regime there in Carolina. So I don't know if there's going to be a talent at 33 that necessarily makes Mingo completely irrelevant. I think it would help the offense as a whole. And I think when you squint, you got to really squint. So people listening, if this is not the audio, if you're listening for a podcast, close your eyes, squint. If you squint really tightly, you can look at the profile of Jonathan Mingo. The speed, the size, kind of how he wins. And you can see a bit of a Chris Godwin-esque role for Mingo in the Dave Canales game plan with Bryce Young. So there's a little bit of projectability there, some stuff that I'm kind of just putting in place that may not be there. They could bring in Ladd McConkey, someone who's going to dominate the slot, and then Mingo becomes a Terrace Marshall on the outside, doesn't really win much for this team. Or they get a guy like a Keon Coleman, Tez Walker, Xavier Legette, someone that's for sure an outside guy. Thielen's not going to be there much longer. And Mingo can develop or continue to develop as a slot weapon for this Carolina Panthers team. So just for those reasons, I'm trying to see if I can get him in a trade, get him added somewhere, not necessarily attacking with a third-round pick or even a fourth-round pick at this point. But if I can, someone's coming sniffing around one of my bench players because they're trying to get depth at a certain spot, sure, throw me your fourth, but throw in Mingo too. Give me Mingo. I want Mingo on my team. I want to stash Jonathan Mingo.
I don't hate that at all. I like it Mingo. And I think, part of his failure last season was just he was forced to be a wide receiver one, and he's just not that guy. He's just simply
not the role. That's not his role. Now, Jason, we've gone down the list. You have one stash player that you're looking to acquire. Why don't we dive right in on it? Who is it? Who's your fifth and final?
Yeah, and we actually, kind of just talked about the Buccaneers, so that kind of works. Trey Palmer. Trey Palmer right now, wide receiver 93. Dog for real. I think he had the highest dog rating from Cody Carpentier last year.
Yes, he graded very, very highly in Cody's dog score last year.
Yeah. And I think especially we talk sometimes about these offseason value dips that come out of nowhere, and Mike Evans returning to the Buccaneers has probably killed a lot of confidence of Trey Palmer managers, people hoping that Mike Evans will be gone, and he's just launched into this massive role on the offense. But the role he has is still fine, and the player he is still good. He's 6 foot, 192 pounds. That's kind of like the prototype right now. That's fourth and runs a 4.3 40. He's extremely fast. And he scored in his very first week of NFL action. Week 1 scored a touchdown. And then towards the end of the season, did some good stuff as well. 84 yards and a touchdown in week 17 and the must-win game against the Saints to make the playoffs. 56 yards and a touchdown against the Eagles in the playoffs. And saw 70% or higher snap share 8 times last year. So I think that this is a wide receiver going into year 2 is still going to see the field a lot more, even with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin still there, especially going to show up in 3 wide receiver sets, sometimes 2 wide receiver sets as well. And he's going to get the ball, and I'm still of the camp they're going to bring back Baker Mayfield. So I think this offense is just going to kind of step forward a little bit more next year in general. So I'm going to try to get some Trey Palmer.
And if Trey Palmer tweets out that he woke up feeling, was it violent?
Yeah.
Or feeling angry. Maybe I woke up feeling angry, pissed off, something like that.
Yeah.
There's something he tweets, play him, because he scores a touchdown every single time he wakes up in that type of mood. I like the Trey Palmer call. I love the Trey Palmer call because he's someone that you can stash in the offseason, but you're not looking for a pump. You're not trying to pump and dump. You're not trying to pump the value and dump him before it goes back down. It's someone you put on your roster and you hold to see if there is an injury to a Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, and he ascends to a more formidable production role. And he's going to be in year 2 with a quarterback because I'm with you. I think Baker Mayfield's back. I think giving Mike Evans that type of money, they have a ton of cap space this year. I think that they run it back with the boys. So I like that call. My last stash is a running back prospect that's not even 23 years old yet, has third-round draft capital, and has above average 40-yard dash and speed score. It's someone that we really, really liked in college, someone whose profile kind of popped about this time last year, and that's Tank Dell for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tank Dell is a player that I'd like to acquire in a deal, throw in as more of a third piece, not a second piece. He doesn't really move the needle for me, but he's someone that if I can kind of end on the back end of a trade, like the third piece of a particular trade, I want to get him on the squad because when I look at the path to or when I look at the potential strategy of the Jacksonville Jaguars draft, there's just not a place for any type of running back investment early on at all because one, they just cut Darius Williams. That's their best cornerback, their most effective cornerback. So now they're very much in the cornerback market. They had the worst pass rush, one of the worst pass rushes in the league last year, even with having Josh Allen have a career season. So that's going to be something that they target. And the whole Calvin Ridley situation. If they sign him, they lose a second-round pick. If they don't, they lose a third-round pick. So you put all that together, and you realize that they're not going to take a running back. It just doesn't seem likely that you go anywhere near running back before round 6 or round 7. And with that type of investment, or with the type of investment that Tank Bigsby saw in 2023, I like to stash. That's a candidate that I'd like to stash. Like I said, not even 23 years old yet. He's got the size, 6 feet, 210 pounds. Had a pretty decent college target share at Auburn. So, I mean, there is room for him to kind of take on a lot of the responsibilities for the Jacksonville Jaguars. If Etienne were to get hurt, I don't think there'll be a split. I'm not hoping for that. It's just one of those situations where you add prospects that you like that could find their way on the field if a few things happen. We know that once the chaos of the season is underway, we're going to be starting some guys we weren't all that excited to start this time of any type of dynasty in season. So that's my final candidate, Tank Bigsby. And to recap, these are 10 players that are worth bringing on to stash in Dynasty Football. Andrei Iosivas, wide receiver from Cincinnati Bengals, a little sprinkle of Charlie Jones, also from the Cincinnati Bengals. Trey Palmer, wide receiver from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. John Metchie, wide receiver from the Houston Texans. Daniel Bellinger, tight end from the New York Football Giants. Izzy Abanikanda, running back from the New York Jets. Patriots wide receiver DeMario Douglas, free agent running back Antonio Gibson, Colts massive tight end Jelani Woods, and favorite of Jason Allwine's stash list, someone I stole from him. Second-year wide receiver Jonathan Mingo from the Carolina Panthers, and second-year running back Tank Bigsby from the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think overall, when you look at the stashable players, it's clear a way you can attack these type of situations, and it comes in the value or it comes in the form of rookie or second-year deflated valued players, right? Tank Bigsby, Mingo, DeMario Douglas, Trey Palmer, Andrei Iosivas, if so facto, John Metchie, right? We both agree this is really, it's unfair to call it his third year.
Right.
Daniel Bellinger, I believe, he's going into his third year. Right? Yeah, he's going to his third year. Okay. Either way, Izzy Abanikanda is going to his second year. Yeah. Yes. So that's the theory of the day. That's the overlying narrative of this exercise is, man, these prospects that we kind of like now, remember them this time next year if they don't pop. These are the type of guys that you can add on the low. These are the guys you can stash. And these are the guys that if they do well, you'll see a lot of tweets come up saying, remember when I said this? Well, you're a little late. It kind of went through the wash. Doesn't matter. We want them on our team. So, Jason, that's the show. Tell everybody where they can follow you, get all your content.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at JFootballWine, and then you can tune into my other show Monday through Friday on the Player Profiler Network at 10 a.m. Eastern, Wake and Take. And then just make sure you follow all of the Player Profiler social media channels. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Go find us. Go follow us. Great stuff coming out there on the daily.
We got so much content coming out, Dynasty, Combine, all that stuff. But if you want to hear some of my thoughts from the NFL Combine, go check out Wake and Take from Monday. Jason and I sat down in the morning, had a little sip of coffee, a little cup of Joe, and talked about the NFL Combine. Blue Chips is in full effect. This is another Combine episode for the Blue Chips where I kind of just unload the notebook, give a bunch of my big takeaways. The game plan with Theo OG will be out this weekend on Saturday. New Futurecast, me, OG, Austin Abbott, and John Lobb hit the scene on a 4-way 1 QB rookie mock. A lot of mocks going on too. Jason just did a 4-round rookie mock that I was in. Did I cause pandemonium with that Roma Dunze pick over Malik?
No. I think we talked about it a bit. It made Matt Babbage happy, but I think that's definitely a big argument. I think that there's honestly going to be drafts where Roma Dunze goes over Marvin Harrison Jr. just because some people do those things. And we also crowned you the winner. We did crown you the winner of the draft. All three of us agreed.
So check that out. I'm Matty Kiwoom. You can find me on X at Matty Kiwoom. And that's it. I love to make Matt Babbage happy. Peace.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.